Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or find a way to lose. Happy Monday. A lot happened this weekend, but I'm not giving a weekend wrap-up. I'll probably wait tomorrow to go live and talk about everything, being unbiased as always, and trying not to take it to the stupid like some of these other people who bring y'all boxing. That being said, like and subscribe. Consider donating to the channel. It'll be appreciated. So what we need to understand when it comes to all of these fighters, man, from anyone fighting on pay-per-view, right? Because everybody, right, that's the ultimate goal. You let Rolly Romero tell you, he's a pay-per-view star. He did it the fastest, right? But the thing is this, right? We know pay-per-view right now, there's a lot of talk about pay-per-view. Everybody's wondering about pay-per-view numbers. Who's selling the most on pay-per-view? If a fight does 1 million pay-per-view buys and there's happens to be over 22 million and 49 million, 50 million, 100 million and money generated from pay-per-view sales. Sometimes people think all that money goes to the fighter. And that's not the case. And I'm telling you right now, when you see Adrien Broner, look, if you guys are going to listen to a boxer talk about the business of boxing, there's only one fighter for you to listen to, and that's Adrien Broner. You know why? Because AB, about billions, athletic bastard, always balling. That man doesn't lie. He may not say something, because if he doesn't want to talk, you can't make him talk. But, AB, he won't lie to you. And when he went and said, well, what he did is he kind of talked a little bit about being over there on PBC and pay-per-view money and having to wait, 6 months or longer just to get his money. And being over there with BLK Prime and fighting on, let's say, a Friday, have your money by Monday. You know what I'm saying? And that was huge for him. And that was a huge selling point. So when you think about that, right? It's like, damn, why would a fighter have to wait so long? Now, I have my own idea of why PBC and the way the model is made up, why they pay fighters the way they do. I'm gonna explain that to you. But then we see Deontay Wilder come out and do an interview on ES News. That's right, I don't mind mentioning another boxing channel, whether it's smaller than mine or bigger than mine. Who gives a shit? Deontay Wilder's talking about fighting and not getting paid after the fight, and talking about if you do any other job, once the job's complete, you get paid, and how he feels in boxing, that's how it should work. And Deontay Wilder, lately he's being a poet, and don't you know it? Kind of like my boy Blank Man, right? But it makes you wonder, what the hell is Wilder talking about? Adrien Broner just touched up on this subject about fighting, pay-per-view, and not getting your money. Wilder talking about pay-per-view and maybe not getting your money and having to wait. But I'm going to tell you what I think the problem is. Now, there's an article I came across that talks about the business of boxing, right? So I'm going to share it with you. But what I personally think it is sometimes these guys, that's why these promoters don't want to give anyone guarantees these days, because you just don't know what pay-per-view is going to do. And it creates a very bad scenario for that promoter if they have a guarantee for a fighter, and with the pay-per-view sales, they don't make enough, and from any other forms of revenue, right? They just don't make enough to close the gap to be able to pay the guarantee to the fighter. What happens is they have to pay out of their pocket. Now, when you guys, if you're saying that kind of sounds familiar, well, yeah, Bob Arum, he went on record and he spoke passionately and with a lot of conviction and like frustration and anger about having to go into the red and pay Crawford out of his own pocket because there were guarantees. And that's something that was in the contract, so Bob Arum knew that, so he had to suck it up, but he didn't like it. That's why he publicly lynched Terrence Crawford, because he's like, hell, this man, in Bob's opinion, he felt like Terrence wasn't making an effort to market himself. So, long story short, if the pay-per-view doesn't do well and there's a guarantee, the promoter has to eat that. But when we talk about it, right, so let's kind of try to break this down. All right? Now, I'm not going to get into no Terrence Crawford, Earl Spence crap. If you want those shenanigans, get off my channel right now, because you're not going to get that here, okay? But let's try to understand this. So where does the money go when a fan puts down whatever? Let's just say $49.95, right? We know it could be way more than that to see a pay-per-view fight on television. All right. Now, a lot of people are like, does it go directly to the fighters? Does it go to the hands of the promoters? What about these networks? What roles do they play? Maybe this piece, in some sort of way, will kind of help you guys to kind of create somewhat of an understanding as we try to shine a little bit of light on it. Now, there may be some small differences in how some pay-per-views are handled, but for the most part, this is, I'm going to say, is the 90% solution. Now, pay-per-view is continued to grow and evolve as matured, right? So it's kind of evolved into a process that customarily works like this. The promoter will make a fight between two combatants, along with an undercard to support it. That's why the undercard is so important. We saw that with Gervonta Davis and the undercard he had when he was fighting in DC the other week. An amazing undercard. He approaches the pay-per-view distributor, okay, along with an undercard to support it, right? Now, when you talk about Showtime, you talk about HBO in the past, right? That undercard was critical because the headliners alone isn't going to convince a network to want to host a fight. Now, the distributor will make a decision as to whether to carry that fight or not. And that's what we're talking about Showtime and how HBO in the past, which I think they should come back. If the fight gets the green light, the distributor goes to work clearing the fight with the multiple system operators who control virtually the entire cable universe. These include companies like Time Warner, Cablevision, Comcast, Cox, and Charter. The cable systems are in on the deal. You always hear me talk about these key decision makers. You always hear me talk about sanctioning bodies, right? You don't hear me talk a lot about fighters and promoters. You hear me talk about those key decision makers, sanctioning bodies, people behind the scenes. This is what you all need to understand when we talk about some of our favorite fighters and why some fights aren't being made or why certain fights look like it's going a certain route and then the plug gets pulled or there's a change of direction. The cable systems are in on the deal. I want to make sure I underscore that. That's their price tag for carrying a certain amount of weight on the local and regional level. They are going to run commercials for the event, and sometimes the promotional materials can be provided by the promoter. Although often the cable people will put together their own because they may have a certain special promotions they will do in association with the event. So it has to be a win-win. A cable system isn't just going to say, okay, you guys come on, you know what, just put your event on our network. No, they got to make it a win-win for them as well. If that's not there, there's a good chance that it probably won't, the fight won't go to pay-per-view. So the standard breakdown is this, right? Because everybody wants to know about the money. The standard breakdown as far as money is concerned is a 10% fee off the top for the distributor, with 45% each for the cable system and the promoter. So when you see a price tag on a fight, you know the promoter will get about 45% of that. Did you guys just understand what I said? So when you see these guys and they say pay-per-view sales, they generated, I don't know, 10 million, 20 million, 100 million, or whatever, right? The promoter's only getting 45% of that. So make sure y'all keep that in mind. So let's say a fight is priced at, just for simplicity, let's go ahead and say $50, right? So if it's a Showtime pay-per-view that's being used, Showtime is not a party that is at risk as far as the fight itself is concerned, but will take the 10% fee off the top. The promoter and the cable company both wind up with $22.50 per sub. Now, that 10% that Showtime takes off the top out of the $50 for that one pay-per-view sale, that's $5. And then what's left is the $45, which is split $22.50 for the promoter and another $22.50 for the cable companies. That's how you break down that one sale. I'm going to say it again. Let's say a fight is priced at $50. If Showtime is being used, Showtime is not a party that is at risk as far as the fight itself is concerned. Showtime is not at risk as far as the fight itself is concerned, but will take the 10% fee off the top, which would be $5 out of that $50. The promoter and the cable company both wind up with $22.50 per subscriber. If a fight sells 1 million pay-per-view subscribers, Showtime's pay-per-view arm will get 5 million. And the promoters will pocket 22,500,000. If that level of revenue, along with other revenue streams, talking about LiveGate, site fees, merchandising, international rights, etc., did not meet what the promoter guaranteed the fighter, well, let's just say that would be an unfortunate occurrence, Bob Arum. Some semantics might be in order at this time. When we talk about pay-per-view, as it applies to fights that are transmitted into the home in exchange for a fee, kind of a misnomer, as promoters have discovered. When fights go into a movie theater or another venue that gets it via closed circuit, it is much closer to the actual concept of pay-per-view because it gets much closer to the ideal that everyone who views it has to pay for it. When it goes into homes, it may turn out to be, in fact, pay per many views, as buyers often invite multiple friends over. As we mentioned in a story last week, that's why promoters are interested in experimenting with going the theater route. Now that would suck. That would suck. Could you imagine if you can't order pay-per-view in your home anymore? They just go strictly to the theaters to that way they can ensure they can account for every pay-per-view subscriber. That would be madness. But that method does not necessarily involve Showtime pay-per-view. But don't get the impression that they are just going along for a free ride when they engineer the pay-per-view distribution. The strength of a company like that is not only can it instantly make an event happen and effectively coordinate it over the television platform, it can also apply some marketing muscle on the national level. You have seen that with the All Access that airs on Showtime, which doubles as an entertainment piece and a de facto infomercial for the pay-per-view telecast. Now, we talk about like Time Warner. They're trying to expand their promotional vehicle to other outlets like CNN, which they control. Now, Showtime pay-per-view has done the same through its, All Access, Fight Camp 360, which was used in 4 parts to promote fights in the past. Now, and it also aired on Showtime's network, but to a much wider audience than what you've seen on like CBS and these other networks. This kind of programming might be the most effective in selling an upcoming fight to the more casual audience because it shows the fighters in a more human reality setting. And I'm going to tell you right now, when HBO came out with 24/7, that was crazy. With Floyd Mayweather, and just to see over the years how this has evolved and Showtime, and even some of these own fighters putting up their own money and creating these little like all access type videos, man, kind of showing them in training camp. It does help you connect with a fighter. But in this atmosphere with the media conglomerates on many properties across the spectrum of broadcast, cable, premium, even satellite programming, these applications and everything else, they're starting to expand their horizons to try to be more creative. Because I tell you what, pay-per-view had become, and they're trying to keep it, as the most prominent part of the boxing culture. You can expect that activity on the part of Showtime and even ESPN, all of which are owned by different conglomerates, will reflect that in the future. Now, for those of you, out of everything I just read, we know that pay-per-view is a mess right now. So many different lies about what fighters are selling, what fighters are making. Out of everything that we just went over, the one thing that I want to make sure that we all understand, because this actually clears some things up for me, is this piece here. Let's say a fight is priced at $50. If Showtime is being used, Showtime is not a party that's at risk as the fight itself is concerned. But Showtime will take 10% off the top. The promoter and the cable companies both wind up with $22.50 per sub. So Showtime, out of $50, Showtime gets its $5, and that $45 that remains, half goes to the promoter, half goes to the cable company. That is how it's broken down. Now, they got all these apps and everything else. Doesn't really get into all of that. But the biggest thing here is like, damn, the promoter only gets half. He gets 5%, 10% goes off the top to the network, then the promoter gets, out of that 45%, he gets half of that. So for the most part, let's just say he's getting really half, a little less than half of what the pay-per-view fight generates. And so we're here thinking, see, this is what's so crazy. We're here thinking, okay, these guys are doing, 10 million and 20 million, 18 million in pay-per-view sales. Man, you got to slice that in half. Let's say 20 million. There's 10 million there to the promoter. So that is why all the hang-ups with Crawford and Spence and pay-per-view and numbers and no guarantees. Because these guys know, in today's day and age, even if these guys would have, let me get my damn calculator out, right? Let's get boom. So let's say realistically, what do you think they would, Spence and Crawford, Wilder and Fury, Wilder and AJ. I don't know what they're doing with this NUE and Fulton, right? But let's just say we got a pay-per-view fight coming up. Let's say it's at $75, right? Let's do that times what? Let's say, even if they did 1 million. 1 million sales, right? That's $75 million. Half of that, that's what's crazy. Let me tell you something. This is what gets me. So half of that is $37,500,000. And basically, a little bit less than that is what's left for the promoter to try to pay his fighters. So this is why you won't see. Now look at the numbers I just ran. $75 for the pay-per-view, $1 million sales. That's $75 million. Half of that goes to the promoter. A little less than half of that, right? How's this person gonna give these guys who want $10, $15 million guarantees? Even if there was a $15 million guarantee for each fighter, right? That's $30 million of the money right there. That leaves them with a little less than $7 million. Now there's the other fighters on the card have to get paid and everything else. So again, this is why it's extremely difficult for fights to get made, because some of these, I don't know what kind of conversations the networks are having, the promoters are having, and all the key decision makers behind the scenes, sanctioning bodies, everywhere. Because remember, the sanctioning bodies get their piece of their money too. You know what I'm saying? I'm not sure if they're having these open discussions and talking this stuff with the fighters to try to get them to understand, look, this is the breakdown. I'm sure there's got to be some kind of an attempt to birth understanding with these guys. But when I look at this, and not everybody want to pay no $75. Matter of fact, most people, illegally stream it, or they find other ways to watch it, but they don't pay for it. So that million sales, man, a million pay-per-view sales. Let me tell you, that number, I don't even think that's realistic, man. You're looking at Tank and Garcia coming up. When you just look at that again, so everybody's talking about Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis. Now, I personally think they're gonna try to sell that fight at $100. I really do. But let's just say, I don't think Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis are gonna do no damn $1 million. But let's do the same number, 75, right? $75, right? Let's say that's what they use, and let's do it. Hey, at a more realistic, like what? Let's say maybe 500,000. It's just gonna be half of what we just came up with, right? That's all it's going to be. It's half of what we came up with. Now you're talking about the same thing, man. $37,500,000. You got to split that. It just doesn't make sense, man, for these fighters to think they still deserve $20, $30, $40 million paydays. It's just not going to happen. So I hope you guys benefited from that. I kind of rambled on there towards the end, but because I'm sitting here, what I'm doing is what I would do if I wasn't doing this video. I'd sit here and play with the numbers for me to try to get an understanding of what the hell's the issue with pay-per-view. Why can't these, why can't these guys get paid these guarantees? But that kind of ties into what I've been saying and a lot of the videos I've done where I'm like, pay-per-view, they're paying fighters on a curb. And what I meant by that is they're giving them these super low guarantees of $500,000, $1 million, $1.5 million, maybe $2 million. Because they know they can at least give them that based on the pay-per-view sales. And they know if they do it that way, these promoters know they'll be able to pay the networks, cable companies, and then they'll get their piece of the pie as well. It's crazy. Crazy, 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 man. The networks, the promoter, the cable companies. Those guys right there, those are the three key ingredients to all this. And the person who gets left there kind of out in the breeze is the promoter, because now he got to pay these fighters. But we will see what happens down the road. But that's why they don't want to give them huge guarantees or any guarantee at all. That's why. And that's why if you really have someone who's coming to the table who's like, hey, I'll guarantee each of these fighters $25 million apiece, right? Let's say that you have someone doing that. That's why fighters, in my opinion, should jump on it. Because this whole thing about the pay-per-view, man, and pay-per-view model and the back end and all that, let me tell you something. I don't care who's going in there to fight. Once you understand that 10% off the top goes to the network, right? And then what remains after that is split between the promoter and the cable company. I'm telling you right now, it's not there. The kind of money we think is there is just not there. It is what it is. But that being said, man, y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans, all 7 continents. And I'm in the breeze.